We're very excited to have this panel. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of them. But before we get started, I feel like I would be remiss in not beginning the working session of the task force with a big happy birthday to all the Marines out there. We understand that today is your 245th birthday, and we wanted to congratulate you on your service and all of the contributions to our country over that 245 years. So as we heard Congressman Panetta say in his remarks, he became aware as a district attorney of the unresolved issues that can lead some veterans to become involved with the criminal justice system. Josh, you are, along with Robin, have been through that process. So I was hoping you could kick us off with just a brief discussion about, how you, your experience with the criminal justice system and how you got to the Hamilton County Veterans Treatment Court.
I was multiple DUIs, nothing else until the final one, where I was pretty much a candidate for the veteran court program, and something that I wish that was available to us, or something that I wasn't too bullheaded about back when I started having these issues, and not being too, oh, I'm tough, I don't need help, I don't, so here we are. But finally I found a program where the team with Judy was exponentially great with what I needed. I think Judy and I, when she picked me up from the corrections center, I was kind of freaking out, and I was like, how am I going to do all this? And she looked straight at me and she says, you're a Marine, you figure this out. And we did. Remember that, Judy?
I do.
She took the bull by the horns, and one foot in front of the other. I mean, it was just from the judge to the prosecutor to the public defender, plus all the other participants. I mean, even the bailiff, even the recorder. I mean, everybody was really great. I mean, it was a breath of fresh air to basically be on the other side, not being just thought of a number or a federal number, so I mean, I had a lot I was staring at a lot. I've had a lot to do, and I figured it out. It was probably, it's the best program I've been, and I'm still in hopes to be a part of Hamilton County in part of a mentorship program. But the program really made me take a look at what my past was, what I should have done, what I was involved in at that point. And then it really made it look like, hey, Josh, this is your last straw. You need to get help. These people care about you. They're not out to get you, as oftentimes it's misconstrued that way. On the other hand, like, if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and they didn't feel like you were really wearing the shoes that you needed to, they were right there to call you on that. I made a decision right then and there that I would never pick up a drink again, and I'm working on 3 years sober. Which is, alcohol has always been my demon. And the thing is that I had a bunch of unresolved things that I didn't want to talk about, or like, nobody wants to hear this, so I would just self-medicate. Well, you drink too much, you make bad decisions, and then you jump behind a wheel, and then next thing you know, it's not good for anybody. So luckily I found this program. They accepted me. They took me on as one of their own, and really just helped me peel back the layers and figure this thing out.
Fantastic. Thank you, Josh. That is I mean, that's what we want to hear, is that there are people and courts out there who will support veterans and provide um, the kind of support and accountability and assistance that veterans need to re-enter or to deal with any issues that they have that are causing problems, and specifically criminal justice system involvement. Swapna, having heard Josh's and Robin's stories, and having worked with veterans who are in the criminal justice system, as you have, could you tell us some about the characteristics that you have seen of veterans who become involved in the criminal justice system, and how they translate into behavior that leads to criminal justice system involvement?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So all of the veterans that I represented were involved in the criminal justice system were either homeless, on the verge of homelessness, or low income. And most of these veterans had less than honorable discharges. Another common characteristics among these veterans was that most of them had undiagnosed or untreated mental health conditions that stemmed from their time in service. Many of my clients would describe their traumatic experiences they went through, ranging from military sexual trauma, being involved in mortar attacks, having back-to-back deployments, witnessing other service members being killed, etc. And because of these experiences, they would suffer from various mental health issues, ranging from major depressive disorder, PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, as well as other mental health issues. And I just remember the words of one of my clients that really stuck in my head. He said, "I went through so many drills and trainings to prepare for my deployment. And when we were under the mortar attacks, all I could do was pray and cry. There's no amount of training that could have ever prepared me for the fear that I felt when I was in the middle of the attack." And I would ask my veteran clients if they ever sought assistance for their mental health while they were in service. And their responses would frequently be, "I didn't know what was wrong with me to know what to ask for. I was told, I told my command and I was told to toughen up. I was ashamed to tell anyone. I thought I'd be attacked again. I was scared that I'd be denied promotions." So a lot of the veterans that I worked with, they were suffering from untreated mental health conditions, and their conditions would manifest in various ways that affect their performance while in service. It would range from self-medicating with alcohol or other substances, lashing out in anger, or having a lack of motivation. And oftentimes these untreated mental health conditions ended up being the root of the behaviors that would lead to their less than honorable discharges. And then due to their discharge status, many of these veterans were then deemed not eligible to have ongoing and preventive mental health treatment through the VA, receive housing vouchers, educational benefits, or vocational rehab, and other veterans benefits. So the mental health issues and behaviors that stem from their time in service would continue post-service, making it difficult for the veteran to maintain employment. It would cause fractured relationships with their support systems, their family, and their friends. And this would often lead to housing instability. And so now, not having stable housing, not having sufficient financial and family support, and having untreated mental health conditions would often lead to their involvement with the criminal justice system. And the charges that I would often see would range from disorderly conduct, DWIs, drug possession charges, theft, and assault charges. So being involved with the criminal justice system and now having a criminal record would then now create another barrier for these veterans in trying to obtain employment and housing. So again, without having another stable source of income or housing, it would exacerbate these mental health conditions for these veterans, and then it would lead them into this cycle of being frequently involved with the criminal justice system. And I actually have a story of this. I represented an other than honorable discharged Marine who had PTSD and severe depression that stemmed from a mortar attack and some other traumatic experiences he had from service. And after deployment, he repeatedly tried to ask for help from his command and was told to man up. And so he started self-medicating with alcohol to help manage his emotions and help him try to go to sleep. And the alcohol made it difficult for him to control his impulses and his anger. And over the next several months after he came back from deployment, he had several suicide attempts. And the situation finally escalated on July 4th when the fireworks triggered him and he ended up committing an assault. And he was discharged for this assault charge, even though he was found to have PTS while in service, and he was never given any treatment for it. And so post-service, he had difficulty obtaining and maintaining employment. He had experienced several episodes of homelessness, had several more suicide attempts, had numerous DWI charges and assault charges, and he was in and out of incarceration. In about 4 years post-service, he was once again triggered by July 4th fireworks and assaulted someone again. But this time he was able to connect with the Veterans Treatment Court, and he was connected to me for legal services. And I was able to file a successful character of discharge claim for him, which allowed him to apply for compensation benefits, a housing voucher, and healthcare. And now he's stably housed, he has steady source of income, and he's able to access VA healthcare, particularly the PTSD counseling for combat veterans and alcohol treatment. And so in the last several years, since he's been able to connect with these services and become stably housed, he hasn't had any more suicide attempts and or any more criminal charges. So from my experience, like untreated mental health and the barriers to employment and lack of housing stability are the core issues that really lead to veterans' involvement with the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Swapna. I appreciate that very informative presentation. Chief Myhand, you had an experience with a veteran who was the subject of a call that some of your officers responded to that had some of the issues that we're talking about here. And from that experience, you came up with a really unique way of dealing with calls involving veterans early on before someone ever got arrested. Would you tell us some about that experience and how you responded to it?
Appreciate everybody being here today to hear some of this stuff. It's really interesting to hear everybody's stories. And so this was about 2014, early 2014, and I had a couple of young Marines that were patrol officers working for me, and a father had come to the department and said, "Hey, my son and I are fighting, and oh, by the way, he's a veteran. He's just come back from Afghanistan, and things have gotten out of control." And so the two officers decided to go to the house, and then they found the veteran was up in the attic. He was hiding under the insulation. He had just a pair of shorts on, and so they decided to talk to him as veteran to veteran, because both of those guys were combat Marines, instead of a police officer to someone who was almost getting ready to be in trouble. And so they were able to kind of to get him to come out of the attic and get down, and they talked to him for a while. They sat on the couch, sort of found out that he had a TBI injury, he had PTSD, and his girlfriend just left him and took his dog, and that was the last straw. And he was in a crisis and of course acting out. And so they were able to divert him from going to jail that day. His father really had no interest in pressing charges, thankfully, but they connected him, got him a dog, and sort of really got him back on track to doing the right thing. And so when they came to me and told me this situation, they said, "Hey, look, Captain, at that time, we want to be the guys that go to every veteran in crisis call." And I said, "Hey, that's a great idea, but what you're telling me sounds a little bit larger than just us." So I did some research, just some basic internet research. And what I found was again, this is 2014, there was article after article on website after website about encounters between a veteran in crisis and law enforcement. And in a large percentage of those, someone was seriously injured or killed in those encounters, either the veteran or the police officer, sometimes both. So obviously I realized, okay, this is a big problem. This is a nationwide problem. So I started looking for what training existed at the time that helped police officers to better respond in these type of situations so we could curb some of this violence. And having found no training that I could find anyway, decided to create our own. And so we created a 16-hour training course for police officers who are military veterans to teach them how to respond to a veteran in crisis. And our main purpose is to get them the 1 second beyond crisis, right? So I've known a lot of guys like Joshua and like Robin, that are self-medicating a lot of times, multiple DWIs, and we are, as a veteran, I certainly want to get those folks connected to veteran treatment courts and those sorts of things. But we really are concerned with that crisis moment, that 1 second there that this is going to go from bad to worse, because police officers are taught not to back down, veterans are taught not to back down, and that's just two brick walls hitting each other. Nothing good comes from that. So I can say that over the last 6, almost 7 years now, we've trained a few hundred police officers, and to my knowledge, the report back that I've gotten from graduates is we have not had a single serious injury or death in any one of those encounters. And so that's a win in my book. And I've helped veterans myself. I've responded to calls and helped a lot of them. And some of them are doing great today. Some of them are cyclical. They're up and down, and they get in trouble and they kind of recover. And that's just the way things go. But I find it tragic that we have an all volunteer military, and that, I'm from the Army, so I'll use the word soldiers, but soldiers develop service related, injuries and issues simply because they raised their hand and decided to go do it, and not so many people do it. And so for them to act in a way that they probably would never act, absent those service related, concerns, I think it's tragic that they end up, getting killed at the hands of a police officer. And as a veteran and a police officer, I never want to be in that situation where I ultimately have to take the life of another veteran who's only acting that way because of what happened to them. So it's been very successful. It's been it has been the most rewarding part of my law enforcement career, to be part of this and to train officers and to see them going out and doing good work and helping veterans get the services they need, get the help they need, so they can go back to being really productive members of society. So that's about 7 years in a nutshell so far.
Thank you, Chief Myhand. And that's very inspiring to hear about the service and the way that you the way that you and your team responded and identified a need that, you're right, was much bigger than you in North Carolina, but taking the steps to recognize and assist veterans in crisis to get the support that they need. I love the point that you make about getting them 1 second past the crisis, because that's really the point at which you can figure out what's going on and what someone needs. I want to turn now to Judy, who is the VA contact once someone has entered the criminal justice system. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit. We've heard some in previous sessions about work that you do with veterans once they get hooked up with you and through the Veterans Justice Outreach Program. But just, kind of walk us through how you identify the needs that they have and the services you're able to connect them with, previously on site at the VA, but also within the community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So as VJO, I work with justice-involved veterans who are entering the criminal justice system. I work with veterans treatment courts, but I also work with those veterans who may be involved in other courts as well, such as, and may be on probation. Every court is different, of course, but in general, once a veteran is identified by a veterans treatment court, I typically receive a referral. And at that point, I reach out to that veteran. I ensure that they are VHA eligible. And if they are, then I conduct what we call a treatment matching assessment. And then I proceed with connecting them to the various services, depending on what that need is. My role with the court is primarily clinical in nature. And so with the veteran's permission, I then report back to the court what the clinical needs are of that justice-involved veteran. I'm able to connect veterans to a wide range of services offered through the VA, which often include mental health treatment, substance use disorder treatment, housing services, primary care. Often, justice-involved veterans are facing criminal charges, and that are facing criminal charges are also facing civil legal issues. And so Some of these civil legal issues may be a suspended driver's license, eviction issues, foreclosures, overdue child support, family law. And so as VJO, part of my role is to ensure that these justice-involved veterans have access to civil legal services. Not all justice-involved veterans are participants in a veterans treatment court, obviously, and so therefore they don't sometimes have access to an attorney or a public defender. And Veteran Health Indiana here in Indianapolis partnered with Indiana Legal Services, and we launched a monthly legal clinic back in November 2018. It had been extremely successful, ranging from around 35 to 40 veterans to walk in that clinic on a monthly basis for those civil, to address civil legal needs. Up until March of 2020, when COVID-19 restrictions really came into place. Since then, Indiana Legal Services has created a virtual legal clinic, and it's now offering 3 days a week. Yes, 3 days a week. And so essentially, we went from a walk-in legal clinic on a monthly basis to now it's being offered 3 times a week. So it's now like 12 times a month. So it really expanded as a result of COVID in a lot of ways. Veterans who are struggling with both criminal and civil legal services often present with very complex issues, complex health issues. And some of this has already been addressed, but unstable housing or homelessness, depression, anxiety, substance use disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. And we know that research has shown that when civil legal services are addressed, it can result in positive health outcomes. And so criminal and civil legal matters, they create barriers, as what's been discussed already, obviously barriers to employment and housing, which are both, social determinants of health. So we want to be addressing that. In the spring of 2020, Indiana Legal Services expanded their eviction avoidance program to cover all 92 counties in Indiana. So now that's available. They've been a wonderful resource. And as VJO, that's part of what my role is, like I said, to make sure we're getting the word out to our veterans that these services are available. They also expanded their partnership with us and began addressing guardianship needs for veterans and their families. And together we've been able to create what we're calling the Guardianship Assistance Project, or GAP. So, having Indiana Legal Services available has been just really a tremendous, invaluable resource. While I'm based out of Indianapolis, I work with many veterans who are in other counties, there's surrounding counties, and so they need access to these civil legal services. And so this now being offered virtually has kind of opened the door to that. Another community legal partner that we've worked with here is Indianapolis Bar Association. And today, in fact, this morning, they were here offering a free wills clinic to veterans. And so that was also offered virtually, so we've been able to, in a virtual platform. So we've really had to get creative. As the VA, we were able to find some iPads actually that were available at our facility that had been used for some of our COVID patients, to be able to connect with family members. And so we were able to use those iPads, and the attorneys were off site, but Indiana Bar Association had some volunteers here, and we were able to actually get these veterans' wills drawn up and completed. And so that's just another, resource. And so as VJO, it's really been great to partner with our community legal partners and get these resources available out to our justice-involved veterans.
It's great to hear that Indiana Legal Services has pivoted so easily to providing providing not just the same services that they had been, but expanding the services that they're available, that they are able to offer veterans during COVID. Just going to prove that no one pivots and no one is flexible like legal services attorneys. So we are thrilled to have them in the LSC fold. I want to turn now to Judge Russell. So we've heard both about we've heard about how people get into the criminal justice system, getting hooked up with VA services, but I kind of want to start looking to the back end a little bit. So when veterans enter the Buffalo Veterans Treatment Court, at what point do you start, I guess I would say, discharge planning? In other words, when do you start thinking about what it looks like for that veteran to meet the requirements for graduation and then have a plan for success after they have left?
All right, and thank you very much for the question and also for the invite to be part of this panel. I do want to thank my fellow panelists. I want to thank Robin Honeycutt and Joshua Martini for sharing something you didn't have to do. So I thank you both for doing that, and I'm sure it helps to enlighten all of us with respects to your stories. Happy Marine birthday and happy Veterans Day for tomorrow. With regards to discharge planning, actually, when I think about not only Veterans Treatment Court, but Treatment Court as a whole, we have 10 key components, key component number 4, and also under the best practice standards number 6. We always talk about complementary services. So when a veteran enters the program, we're always thinking about how can we put that veteran in the best position to be successful in their journey of recovery. Part of that process is, where are they presently at? If they're unstable in housing, then we're going to work on safe, habitable housing. If in addition to whether it's substance or mental health issues that they're addressing, and working with our Veterans Justice Outreach worker in the VA on providing those services, are there other issues that they're dealing with respects to maybe their physical health care? It could be dental, could be vision. We want to make sure all of these complementary services are in place. If they're dealing with civil issues, with respects to pending evictions, with respects to visitation, with regards to their children, bankruptcy, we know that we need to bring together a collective of community services available and present in what we do in Veterans Treatment Court to put that veteran in the best position. So when we talk about discharge planning, we're talking about thinking from the beginning, how do we get this person to be in the healthiest position, the best position, so they can be successful. Requirement to complete the Veterans Treatment Court is of course safe, habitable housing. For veterans on medication, they're able to effectively manage their medication, manage their disorders. If they're unemployed and employable, then we're going to work on employment before they complete. If a veteran would like to go to school, college, we work with our local universities. We have a program called Education to Recovery, where they will assist veterans in getting into college. And we have in the courtroom itself, not only the Veterans Justice Outreach worker to address the healthcare needs, but we also have a representative from the Veterans Benefit Department, from the Department of Veteran Affairs, to assist veterans in accessing benefits that they earned through their service. In addition, a representative to assist with veterans on their accessing their GI benefits for college or for job training, things of that sort. So I'd say the first step is getting the veteran engaged, getting them motivated to attend their counseling, treatment services, and then we'll work with their therapists on what are the next steps to get this person that once they complete and graduate from the program, they're going to be self-sustaining and be able to sufficiently manage whatever that brought them into the court. And so they don't have to return except for, as Robin stated, when they're visiting, coming back, lending a hand, or potentially volunteering as a volunteer veteran mentor.
Thank you. To follow up on that point, aside from either, just dropping by because they're in the neighborhood or serving as a mentor, do graduates receive any type of follow-up from the court? And if there is a subsequent qualifying criminal charge that arises, are they able to go through the Veterans Treatment Court again, or is that an option?
It is definitely not a bar. Hopefully, everyone is in a position where they will be successful in their journey of recovery, don't relapse or have other issues in the criminal justice system. But if they do, it's not a bar for them re-entering back into the Veterans Treatment Court program. Also, we work to hopefully keep our veterans engaged. I know the staff at the Veterans Treatment Court, they'll set up scheduled taxes even after someone completes the program. We also have a treatment court softball team. So some of our, it's open and available. Some of our graduates may want to be part of the softball team. We also have an alumni association, which is comprised of graduates from our various treatment court programs, where they get together during the course of the year and do some wonderful events, outing, clean, sober, safe outings, and continue that network. We also annually have a wonderful, the veteran, or shall I say the Graduates Alumni Association hosts a major event and luncheon where all the various graduates over the years are invited to come, and in addition to the treatment community and the various key stakeholders attend. So hopefully we work to keep engaged. Mr. Honeycutt, occasionally I would call him on special projects that we might work on. So we try to work to keep our men and women who served our community engaged. A number of our volunteer veteran mentors will keep them active or engaged in different projects and volunteer projects in the community. And I will say it's been a pleasure and honor presiding in the Veterans Treatment Court and working with the men and women who served.
Judy, turning a little bit to a point even past that, where unfortunately some veterans do end up being incarcerated after being convicted on criminal charges. How does the VA work with veterans in that situation to help them get services upon their point of reentry into the community?
There are two programs within the Veteran Justice Program. It consists of Veteran Justice Outreach and Healthcare Reentry. So the VJO, myself, works primarily with veterans who are entering the criminal justice system or sometimes being released from local jails, home detentions, community corrections. But the HCRV specialists, Healthcare Reentry for Veterans specialists, work specifically with veterans exiting the criminal justice system, such as coming out of the Department of Corrections. And their primary goal is to get the veteran reconnected to healthcare. And even sometimes that means assisting them in getting reconnected to their benefits or guiding them on how they do that. In general, I would say the HCRV specialists are working with veterans to get them reconnected to housing. You know, some may be coming out and not having a place to go. And so these specialists are in communication with veterans prior to their release from the Department of Corrections. I want to say it's about 6 months prior to their release. The healthcare reentry specialists are then connecting those veterans to housing, mental health, substance use disorder services, and again, similar services to what I'm getting folks, making sure people have access to, but they're doing it on as they come out of the Department of Corrections. So these specialists partner also with the Department of Corrections and linking these veterans to a variety of services. Most recently, there's an exciting initiative called the IPAD initiative, which we're allowing, or through our program, our national program, these iPads are going into jails and prison systems to, in an effort to increase access to offenders. And so, especially now with COVID, this has become really critical. So this way we can speak directly to an inmate and obtain necessary information to know how to best serve them. And so we're in the process really now of just getting these iPads into our prisons and into the jails currently. But it's an exciting initiative, and it will really break down some barriers that have existed, such as drive times to these facilities. And then most recently, obviously, the COVID-19 restrictions. And so we're definitely, we've got these two programs, VJ, Veteran Justice Outreach, and Healthcare Reentry, which really is there to help veterans coming out of the criminal justice system.
I want to throw a question to both Robin and Josh. So we've heard a lot. We had heard both of your comments about getting involved. We've heard from Chief Myhand about how best to his strategy for assisting veterans on a call, from Judy about assisting veterans who are currently involved in the criminal justice system. What do you two consider to be, what were the biggest factors in your successful completion of your respective veterans treatment court programs? And do you continue to experience any legal barriers today to employment or housing or anything like that?
I haven't had any legal barriers at all since my graduation to Veterans Court. In fact, a lot of people knowing I went through that program makes things a lot easier now, especially since in Buffalo, it's very recognized. For successful, I mean, first and foremost, it's, the judge presiding. So Judge, I got to give you credit there. But really the team that is surrounded with him is the environment they provide for us is very loving, caring, and they didn't start this to see you fail, and they'll be there for you for however long the ride has to be.
The key factors, I think I hit, like the whole team was great, but I'd have to agree with Robin. Judge Hughes up here, he's not a veteran, but he loves veterans. 100%. Hamilton County especially here in Indiana, is a tough county. They don't really put up with any nonsense, and they're really good at knowing, okay, we're gonna, this person is not learning their lesson or anything. And Judge Hughes is in courtroom 3, and from what I understand and what I've witnessed, he's a no nonsense kind of judge. He's fair. But it was kind of neat to see him from in a regular penal side of it versus Hamilton County Veteran Court, which the judge, it's like a switch, the switch is flipped. He's very compassionate, empathetic. Like I said, he loves veterans, and I've seen him, going along with what Robin said, giving people many chances, even in that realm. Like I said, personally, just learning interpersonal skills, and and getting the help, and really defining, okay, here I am at 44 at the time. What do I really want to do with the rest of my life? I've got the help. This is it. I need to make a choice. And that's about it. That's it. The whole team, the resources that are there. It's, the old saying is, if you go to your mom's house and she tells you, if you go home hungry, it's your own fault. Same thing with Veteran Court. There's so many resources there, and if you don't use them, that's on you, because the people really do, like, they're loving and caring, and they want to see you succeed, and they don't look at you as another docket or another number. So that was probably the biggest thing for success. Legal barriers, I was just chatting with Chief. I'm working on expungement. I was working on it while I was trying to keep it fresh within the court system. It's frustrating, because I do know what I want to do when I grow up. I want to get into law enforcement. I think it'd be a good advocate being through, you know, experiences I've been through on that side of the house, being able to bring to the table as a deputy or a police officer and having the compassion of what they've created down in North Carolina, knowing how to de-escalate situations, because I've been there, and being able to share that bridge with people that do come into the crisis part of
Mhm.
what they're dealing with. So yeah, the expungement is the biggest thing right now for me, because you know, I was chatting with the chief there in North Carolina that I'm developing. I've got good relationships at the courthouse, but I'm also trying to develop relationships with the local sheriff's department, which I've signed up for ride-alongs and stuff. I'm just trying to keep my face, you know, and my name on the top of everybody's head. You know, like this, you know, I want them to, hey, I don't want to give up, because it's ultimately what I want to do. But the biggest thing is the expungement right now.
I think that's an important point to recognize, is that even a success such as yours, where you're back on track and you are feeling personally comfortable or personally successful in your graduation, sometimes there can still be legal barriers that prevent you from getting ultimately where you want to go. I'm a little disappointed that you're not thinking about channeling your talents and experience into being a Veterans Treatment Court attorney, but I guess we will take you however we get you.
Right.
Chief Myhand, I wanted to ask, transition back to your project. What did you consider, or what do you consider the biggest challenges and the biggest successes in initiating the Veterans Crisis Response training and standing up the team? And what advice would you give to a police department that wanted to adapt the training and the model to their own teams?
So I'm going to kind of go back to my first sergeant days and just tell people, look, excuses are not allowed in this arena. If you want to do something, you just make it happen. I would say the most common obstacle that I've heard people talk about is money. They don't have the funding to do this. And I'll say that we have probably done everything for $1,000 over 7 years. And that was really our biggest cost. Was I bought, again, coming from the Army, we like to put things on uniforms. I gave every officer that completed the class a pin that said veteran on it, and they would wear it on their shirt. So hopefully when they're talking to a veteran, they might recognize, oh, you're a veteran. And that might help do that. But that's really the only cost that we've had. We've just, again, it needed to be done, and we just made it happen. And I looked for people that were interested in helping because there was work to be done, not because they were going to get something out of it or they would be able to raise more money for their nonprofit. I mean, I really wasn't interested in that. And I've been very deliberate about who we sort of partner with, because I've had a ton of people say that, oh, this is a great idea, I'd love to be part of it, and I want to make sure that they're doing it for the right reasons, So it really requires what I would call a champion in your area. So in Buffalo, I have never been there, have no idea what resources are available in Buffalo or in Indianapolis or other parts of the country. And so what we really try to focus on are what are local resources, because in my experience, a lot of veterans sometimes have a distrust for the VA, the big VA as they call it. And so we didn't want me saying, hey, let me get you over to the VA to exacerbate that crisis. So I think you really have to have someone who's passionate about this, who's motivated, who's willing to find out what exists where you're at and employ those resources. There are tons of nonprofits that are willing to provide services to veterans at low or no cost. And I think you really should tap into those, because every obstacle that you can remove from someone's path makes it easier. Not that we want to give them a free ride, of course, but I want I don't want to have to sit there and figure out, all right, how do we get around this thing? How do we get around that? Let's clear the path, remove all obstacles, and get that veteran connected as soon as possible, because they don't want to be acting the way that they're acting either, right? I jokingly have said over the years that everything that I've done with this has secretly been self-serving, right? That I want to make sure that the day that I'm in crisis, there's somebody that responds, so I don't go, and get myself in trouble. And that's, really what it is. And you've got to want to do this. And if you're doing it to make money or something, because it's a sexy idea and it's really good for raising funds and donations, and you're not doing it for the right reason. You got to do it because you want to help somebody and they need it. And a lot of times there's a void there, and veterans are slipping through the cracks all the time. And it's good to see some of these young guys that are have turned the corner and they're doing well, and that's what we want. But I know a bunch of them. I got one of my very close, someone very close to me. His son is a combat veteran Marine, and he's incarcerated right now and has really spiraled out of control just this year. And it's sad to see that. And his VA file is probably as thick as the phone book. So there's no reason why he should have slipped through the cracks, but it happens. So someone, we've got to take care of ourselves, each other. That's what we have to do. So I don't want to hear excuses, and that's kind of my personality, I guess. But it's just really making things happen that need to happen.
I think that's to your point about making sure that barriers to connecting services are taken down. I think that's one of the main points that we have heard repeated over and over again throughout our work on this task force, is that so many places have this service and this service that don't know that the other one exists. So making those connections is a big part of what our task force is striving to do in raising awareness about who's serving veterans in communities and what structures are in place to connect all of them together, and to really give voice to programs in various states and cities across the country that are doing this work well, that hopefully others can model and take away from that. I have one last question that I want to ask all of you, and it's a slight, it's a little bit of a different question for each of you, but it has to do with COVID. Everyone knows that COVID has been a big factor driving how we work and how we interact with each other over the past year. I know, for example, Josh, your actual graduation ceremony was delayed because of COVID. So I'm curious for Robin and Josh, how has COVID affected your ability, if at all, to remain connected to the court and the services and supports that you need to remain successful? And to the others, how has COVID affected your ability to serve your clients and your populations? And I'm going to do this the Ron Flagg way and call on people as they appear on my screen. So Judy, I'll start with you.
Well, the VA here in Indianapolis is still offering services virtual platform. There's no face-to-face right now, obviously for safety reasons, but they're available by video as well as by phone. Those services and our courts are meeting virtual as well for staffing. And well, this particular court, I should say Hamilton County, is doing not only staffing by virtual platform, but also the court hearing is held by Zoom. And so they've just taken a lot of precautions. I think early on they tried to go face to face and then had some positive cases, and so went quickly back to Zoom. But the services are available still for veterans, and I can help get veterans who are interested still engaged in treatment. But it isn't the way it was, unfortunately, but we are still able to reach out. And I've had a lot of luck with connecting with veterans by video, and that just seems to have really reduced, transportation barriers for one thing. And so, looking into the future, I kind of see this as, an option that we'll continue to use. I think there are going to be times where you absolutely, when it opens up and we can get back face to face, that's what we're going to want to do. But for those veterans that are, farther away, I think this is a really good resource. And so groups are being held that way as well. and individual therapy sessions, whether it's substance use disorder or mental health, primarily are video and phone.
Thank you, Chief. Robin, you're next.
Before COVID hit, I was actually getting ready to become a mentor in Judge Russell's Veterans Court, and that put that to the skids. But I mean, as far as treatment goes, there's been a lot of Zoom meetings with my counselors, and then phone calls with therapists. So the treatment is still going along. I mean, other than that, I mean, I miss not being able to go to the court and be able to volunteer. But other than that, there's really no issue. We've been pretty lucky.
Great. Josh?
Nothing. I mean, it kind of put a hold on things, but I was in what was the third phase of veteran court. So my exposure to everybody was to needing the services wasn't as high in the demand for somebody in that phase of veteran court. I was in contact with everybody via email or telephone to let me know what was going on. The actual graduation or the ceremony happened October 2nd, which was pretty neat. Most of Judy was on Zoom. Most of the team was on Zoom, but the people or the veterans that were graduating were actually in the actual courtroom with the judge, and then a couple of the people that were in charge, and then we could have one other person attend with us. But other than that, I mean, it was, I think if you needed the services and needed something at that point, I know for a fact that it was a phone call away for me. So, I mean, it was, it wasn't like, oh, COVID's here, the less work we have to do. It wasn't like that. I mean, they were checking on me. It was Texas, stuff like that. So, I mean, even though we weren't face to face, they still had that I wouldn't say thumbs on me, but they were really, concerned if I was doing okay, and if work was doing okay and stuff like that. And so yeah, it was great.
Chief Myhand?
COVID's really had no effect on our response to things. I mean, we take some maybe additional safety precautions that we didn't before, but we still answer 911 calls every day. So really no change for us.
Judge Russell?
We conduct Veterans Treatment Court and other treatment courts virtually for the most part. Under certain circumstances, we may have an in-court appearance, but for the most part, it's virtual. So we'll have virtually present, we'll have the representative from the Department of Veteran Affairs, maybe some other community treatment providers, veteran service organizations, and our volunteer veteran mentors, in addition to the participants in the virtual proceedings.
And Swapna, you're our last responder.
So I've actually been with two different organizations since COVID started. So I was with the Homeless Persons Representation Project, and now I'm with the Legal Counsel for the Elderly. And I think the adjustments have been similar. We've been conducting for intakes and client meetings, we've been doing them over the telephone. We've been sending any documents that we need signed by the clients via email or with pre-stamped envelopes to get them back. As far as community outreach goes, that has been a little bit of a hindrance because some community programs have been shut down. So to be able to get some of the information out to clients, have been done through Zoom and other type of virtual platforms. One thing that we've definitely have recognized during this is that there's a lot of loneliness that's impacted a lot of our clients. So really touching base with the clients on a more frequent basis, and also understanding that we have to have more patience in getting communication back from clients, because when somebody might have had access to libraries or to the VA centers to be able to use computers and phones, some of those options are more limited now. So I think, just having more patience with the clients and understanding that it might take a longer period of time to get things back, and adjusting accordingly to that has been a big change.
Great. Thank you, Swapna. And thank you to all of you for this wonderful panel. We really appreciate your participation, sharing your stories and experiences. This has been very informative and will go a long way toward helping us draft recommendations into the report for strategies for better serving veterans who become involved with the criminal justice system.